Hi, I'm Janet, 24 years old, and I thought I knew what family loyalty meant until my father gave me an ultimatum that would change everything. Standing in my tiny studio apartment last spring, I held the phone as my dad's voice cut through me like ice. You will attend your sister's wedding or I'm cutting off your tuition completely. No exceptions. For years, I'd been the invisible daughter, while my sister Carolyn got all the attention and praise. What my family didn't know was that I had a secret that would flip their world upside down. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Please hit that like button and subscribe, because you absolutely will not believe how this family drama ends and how I turned the tables on everyone who underestimated me. Growing up in our suburban Connecticut home, the contrast between Carolyn and me was like comparing a spotlight to a shadow. She's 3 years older, and from the moment she could walk, she was the golden child who could do no wrong. When Carolyn brought home straight A's, Dad would take her out for expensive dinners and brag to his business partners. When I brought home the same grades, he'd barely glance up from his newspaper and mutter something about meeting expectations. Carolyn was the captain of the debate team homecoming queen and valedictorian. She got into Harvard with a full scholarship, while I watched from the sidelines, knowing that no matter what I achieved, it would never measure up in their eyes. During family gatherings, relatives would shower her with attention while I served drinks and cleaned up afterward. My father built a successful construction company from nothing, and my mother climbed the social ladder right alongside him. They joined the country club, threw elaborate dinner parties, and made sure everyone knew about Carolyn's accomplishments. Meanwhile, I worked 3 different jobs during college just to help cover my expenses. I cleaned offices at night, tutored kids on weekends, and worked at a campus coffee shop between classes. What killed me most was that I never asked them for help. I applied for every scholarship, every grant, every work-study program available. I ate ramen noodles for months and wore the same 3 outfits on rotation, because I was too proud to admit I was struggling. But somehow in their minds, I was still the burden, the disappointment, the one who couldn't get her life together. The truth was, I was maintaining a 4.0 GPA in biochemistry at one of the most prestigious universities in the state. I spent countless hours in research labs working on projects that could potentially change lives. But my family saw none of this because they never bothered to ask. They assumed I was barely scraping by, probably because I didn't have time for their social events or because I couldn't afford the designer clothes Carolyn wore. That phone call came during my final semester of graduate school. I was 3 weeks away from defending my master's thesis in biochemistry, working 18-hour days between classes, research, and my part-time jobs. When I saw Dad's name on my phone, I thought maybe, just maybe, he was calling to check on me or ask about my studies. Instead, his voice was cold and businesslike. Your sister's engagement party is next month, and the wedding is in 6 weeks. I expect you to be available for both, plus all the preparation events. Carolyn needs your help, and family comes first. When I tried to explain that I had important academic commitments, he cut me off. Janet, I've been patient with your little hobby degree, but it's time to face reality. Carolyn is marrying into the Harrison family. This wedding will establish connections that could benefit our entire family for generations. The way he said hobby degree made my blood boil. 5 years of sacrifice, of proving myself over and over again, and he still saw my education as some kind of phase I was going through. Carolyn's engagement to Richard Harrison was like something out of a fairy tale, at least from the outside. Richard came from old money, the kind of family that had buildings named after them at Ivy League schools. His father owned a law firm that represented Fortune 500 companies, and his mother sat on the boards of 3 different charities. The wedding planning began immediately, and it became clear that no expense would be spared. Dad hired the most exclusive wedding planner in the state, booked the historic Riverside Manor for the reception, and ordered flowers that cost more than most people spend on a car. The guest list included senators, judges, and business leaders from across New England. From day one, I was expected to drop everything and help with preparations. Janet, We need these 500 invitations addressed by hand in calligraphy. Mom announced, dumping boxes on my kitchen table. Carolyn is too busy with her job at the law firm. When I pointed out that I was also busy with my thesis research, she waved her hand dismissively. Honey, Carolyn is building a real career. You can take a break from your studies. The errands were endless. Drive 2 hours to pick up special ribbons. Spend an entire Saturday comparing flower arrangements. Stand in for dress fittings because Carolyn was too stressed to handle everything herself. Each request came with the same underlying message: my time wasn't valuable, my priorities didn't matter, and I should be grateful to play any role in Carolyn's special day. The dress incident was particularly humiliating. Mom took me shopping for something appropriate to wear to the wedding. She steered me away from anything too nice, settling on a boring beige dress that would ensure I faded into the background. "We don't want you drawing attention away from the bride," she explained, as if I had ever been the type to seek the spotlight. Meanwhile, my thesis advisor, Dr. Martinez, was trying to prepare me for the biggest opportunity of my academic career. There was an international conference on cancer research happening the same weekend as the wedding, and I'd been selected to present my groundbreaking work on cellular regeneration. This wasn't just any conference, it was the kind of event that could launch careers and change lives. But when I tried to explain this to my family, they looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "Can't you just reschedule?" Carolyn asked, not even looking up from her wedding magazines. "I mean, how important could it really be?" Dad's response was more direct. "Janet, I pay $12,000 a year toward your tuition. That may not seem like much to you, but it's money I could use elsewhere. If you can't prioritize family when it matters, maybe it's time I reconsidered my investment in your education." The threat hung over everything. $12,000 was indeed a small fraction of my total education costs, thanks to my scholarships and assistantships, but it was the principle that stung. He was holding that money over my head like a weapon, using it to control my choices and force my compliance. What my family didn't know was that 3 months earlier, I'd received news that would change everything. I was not only graduating summa cum laude, but I'd been accepted into the PhD program with a full research fellowship that covered tuition, living expenses, and provided a generous stipend for my work. Martinez had nominated me for the fellowship based on my research into cancer cell regeneration. My work had shown promising results in early trials, suggesting that we might be able to reverse certain types of cellular damage that lead to aggressive cancers. The pharmaceutical company backing the research was so impressed that they'd offered additional funding for extended trials. I kept this secret because I'd learned over the years that sharing good news with my family only led to disappointment. When I made the dean's list freshman year, Dad's response was to ask why I wasn't valedictorian like Carolyn had been. When I won a research grant sophomore year, Mom worried that I was becoming too academic and wouldn't find a husband. So I stayed quiet about the fellowship, about the job offers already coming in from major research institutions, about the fact that my thesis advisor was calling my work revolutionary. I let them think I was still struggling, still dependent on Dad's financial scraps, still the family disappointment who couldn't get her act together. The conference invitation was the culmination of everything I'd worked toward. 300 of the world's leading cancer researchers would be there, including representatives from Johns Hopkins MD Anderson and the National Cancer Institute. My presentation slot was during the main session, not relegated to some poster session in a hallway. This was recognition that my work mattered, that I had something valuable to contribute to the scientific community. But the conference dates were set in stone the same weekend as Carolyn's wedding. The presentation schedule had been finalized months in advance, and there was no possibility of rescheduling. I had to choose between supporting my family and supporting my future. Dr. Martinez understood the significance of this moment. "Janet," she told me during one of our lab sessions, "opportunities like this don't come around often. The work you've done here could save lives. Don't let anyone convince you it's not important." Her words stayed with me as the wedding pressure intensified. Family dinner conversations became strategy sessions about seating arrangements and flower choices. Every phone call from Mom included another task that simply had to be completed before the big day. Carolyn started treating me like her personal assistant, calling at all hours with urgent requests that turned out to be minor inconveniences she couldn't be bothered to handle herself. The breaking point came during a bridesmaid dress fitting. Carolyn had chosen 5 of her closest friends to be bridesmaids plus me. But where the other girls were treated like honored guests, I was treated like hired help. "Janet, can you steam everyone's dresses and pick up the shoes from the boutique? Oh, and we need someone to organize the gift bags for the bachelorette party." Standing in that bridal shop watching my sister laugh with her friends while treating me like I was invisible, I realized something important. I had been enabling this treatment for years by accepting it, by never standing up for myself, by always putting their needs before my own. The morning of the wedding dawned gray and drizzly, which felt appropriate for my mood. I'd spent the previous evening in the lab, trying to make final adjustments to my research presentation while fielding constant phone calls about wedding emergencies. My laptop bag sat by the door, packed with everything I needed for the conference, but I still hadn't made the final decision about which direction my day would take. The chaos started early. At 7 in the morning, my phone rang with Carolyn in full panic mode. "Janet, you have to get to the florist right now. They delivered the wrong centerpieces and the wedding planner is being completely useless. I need you to fix this immediately." I threw on clothes and drove across town to discover that the florist had delivered white roses instead of cream roses. To anyone else, the difference would be unnoticeable, but to Carolyn, it was a catastrophe of epic proportions. I spent 2 hours negotiating with the florist, calling backup suppliers, and personally transporting the correct flowers to the venue. By the time I got to the bridal suite, Carolyn was in full bridezilla mode. The hairstylist was running late, the makeup artist had mixed up the foundation shade, and the photographer was asking too many questions. "Where have you been?" she snapped at me. "I've been trying to reach you for hours. The caterer needs someone to do a final head count, and Mom is having a meltdown about the seating chart." I looked around the suite at the 5 other bridesmaids, all of whom were calmly getting their hair and makeup done while sipping champagne. None of them had been asked to handle emergencies or run last-minute errands. That privilege was reserved for me. The final straw came at noon when I was supposed to leave for the conference. Dr. Martinez had texted me the final presentation schedule, and my slot was at 3 o'clock. If I left immediately, I could make it with time to spare and present the work that could change my entire career trajectory. But as I was gathering my things, Dad stormed into the bridal suite with his face red with anger. "The wedding cake is the wrong flavor," he announced. "The bakery claims we ordered vanilla, but Carolyn specifically requested chocolate. Someone needs to get over there and sort this out right now." All eyes turned to me. Not to any of the other bridesmaids, not to any of the groomsmen, not to the wedding planner who was being paid thousands of dollars to handle exactly these kinds of problems. Me. Dad. "I can't," I said quietly. "I have something important I need to attend to." His face darkened. "More important than your sister's wedding, more important than family." "Actually, yes," I replied, and the room went completely silent. Carolyn's voice rose to a shriek. "Are you kidding me right now? This is my wedding day and you're going to abandon me for some stupid school project?" "It's not a school project," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's a presentation of cancer research that could potentially save lives." Dad stepped forward, his voice low and threatening. "Janet, I'm going to say this once. You will go fix the cake situation. You will be in every wedding photo, and you will stay until the last guest leaves the reception. Or you can consider your tuition payments permanently canceled and yourself no longer welcome in this family." The ultimatum hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Around me, bridesmaids pretended to be busy with their phones and makeup, unwilling to get involved in family drama. Carolyn stood there in her wedding dress, arms crossed, waiting for me to cave like I always did. But something had shifted inside me. Maybe it was years of accumulated resentment, Or maybe it was the clarity that comes from finally seeing a situation for what it really is. I realized that I'd been so busy trying to earn their love and respect that I'd forgotten to respect myself. "You know what?" I said, setting down the emergency phone I'd been carrying all morning. "I'm done." I walked to the corner where I'd left my laptop bag and conference materials. I have been running around all morning fixing problems that aren't my responsibility for a family that treats me like hired help instead of a daughter and sister. I'm going to present research that could help cure cancer, and if you can't see the value in that, then maybe this family isn't worth belonging to. The explosion that followed was immediate and volcanic. Carolyn started screaming about how I was ruining her special day. Mom began crying about how she'd raised such a selfish daughter. Dad's threats escalated to complete disownment and promises that I'd regret this decision for the rest of my life, but I was already walking toward the door. For the first time in my adult life, I was choosing myself over their demands, my future over their manipulation, my dreams over their expectations. The drive to the conference venue felt like driving toward freedom. I arrived at the convention center with 45 minutes to spare, my hands shaking slightly as I parked the car. In the bathroom, I changed out of my bridesmaid dress and into the professional suit I'd brought for the presentation. Looking at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. For years, I'd seen myself through my family's eyes, the disappointment, the burden, the one who couldn't measure up. But now I saw someone else entirely. The conference was everything I'd hoped it would be, and more. The main auditorium was packed with researchers, pharmaceutical executives, and medical professionals from around the world. When Dr. Martinez introduced me, she emphasized the groundbreaking nature of my work and the potential implications for cancer treatment. Taking the stage, I felt a rush of confidence I'd never experienced before. This was my world, my expertise, my moment to shine. The presentation covered 3 years of intensive research into cellular regeneration, including laboratory results that showed significant promise in reversing certain types of cancer cell damage. The audience was completely engaged from the first slide. I watched distinguished professors lean forward in their seats, saw pharmaceutical executives taking detailed notes, noticed the buzz of excitement that rippled through the crowd as I explained my methodology and results. These people understood the significance of what I was presenting in a way my family never could. During the question and answer session, the queries came from some of the most respected names in cancer research. Dr. Elizabeth Chen from Johns Hopkins asked about the potential for human trials. The research director from Pfizer wanted to know about scalability for mass treatment. A professor from Harvard Medical School inquired about collaboration opportunities. When I stepped off the stage, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Business cards were thrust into my hands from pharmaceutical companies, research institutions, and medical centers. Dr. Martinez was beaming with pride, introducing me to colleagues and potential collaborators. The most significant moment came when Dr. Sarah Williams from the National Cancer Institute approached me. "Janet, your work is exactly what we've been looking for. We have a position opening up in our advanced research division, and I'd like to discuss it with you. The starting salary is 6 figures, plus research funding and full benefits." Other offers followed quickly. A pharmaceutical company wanted to fund extended trials of my research. An international research consortium invited me to present at their annual symposium in Switzerland. A prestigious medical journal requested the rights to publish my findings. As the day progressed, I realized that my phone had been buzzing constantly with calls and texts from my family. But I kept it on silent, focused entirely on the opportunities unfolding before me. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who valued my mind, my work, and my potential. The award ceremony that evening was the pinnacle of the entire experience. When they announced my name as the recipient of the Young Researcher Excellence Award, the standing ovation felt like validation for every sacrifice I'd made, every night I'd stayed up late in the lab, every moment I'd doubted whether my work mattered. Standing on that stage holding an award that recognized me as one of the top young cancer researchers in the country, I finally understood my worth. I didn't need my family's approval or financial support. I had built something valuable entirely on my own merit. Returning home that evening felt like entering a war zone. My phone showed 37 missed calls and 62 text messages ranging from guilt trips to threats to manipulative pleas. But armed with the confidence from my successful presentation and the job offers in my laptop bag, I felt ready to face whatever awaited me. Dad was waiting in the living room, still wearing his wedding tuxedo, but with his tie loosened and his face flushed with anger. Mom sat on the couch clutching tissues and looking like she'd been crying for hours. Carolyn had changed out of her wedding dress, but still wore her tiara as if clinging to the symbol of her special day. "Well, I hope you're satisfied," Dad began before I'd even closed the door. "You ruined your sister's wedding, embarrassed our entire family in front of the Harrisons, and showed everyone exactly what kind of selfish person you really are." Carolyn jumped in immediately. "Do you have any idea what I went through today? The photographer kept asking where you were for family photos. Aunt Margaret kept wondering why my sister wasn't there to support me. I had to make excuses for you all night." "Where were you anyway?" Mom added, her voice shaking with emotion. "What could possibly be more important than family?" I set my laptop bag down carefully and faced them with a calmness that surprised even me. I was presenting cancer research to 300 of the world's leading researchers. I was receiving job offers from pharmaceutical companies and medical institutions. I was winning an award for scientific excellence. The room went completely silent. Dad's angry expression shifted to confusion, then skepticism. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that I graduated summa cum laude 3 weeks ago. I'm talking about the full PhD fellowship I received, which covers all my tuition and expenses plus a stipend. I'm talking about the job offer I got today from the National Cancer Institute that pays more in a year than you've contributed to my education in total." I reached into my laptop bag and pulled out the award I'd received, setting it on the coffee table where they could all see it. Young Researcher Excellence Award for groundbreaking work in cancer cell regeneration. This represents 3 years of research that could potentially save thousands of lives. Carolyn was the first to react, her voice rising with disbelief. "You're making this up. If any of this were true, we would have known about it." "Why would you have known about it?" I asked. "When have any of you ever asked about my studies, my research, or my career goals? When have you shown any interest in my life beyond what errands I can run for you?" Dad's face was changing colors as the implications sank in. "You mean you didn't need the tuition money?" "I haven't needed your money for 2 years, I replied. "But I let you think I did because I hoped that maybe somehow contributing to my education made you feel connected to my success. I thought maybe it meant you cared about my future." The manipulation was immediate and predictable. Mom started crying harder, talking about how hurt she was that I'd kept secrets from the family. Dad tried to backtrack on his threats, claiming he'd only been trying to teach me about priorities. Carolyn attempted to make the conversation about how my success somehow diminished her wedding day. But I was done with their manipulation tactics. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I'm moving out of this apartment and into graduate housing near the university. I'm starting my PhD program with full funding, and I'm probably going to accept the job offer from the National Cancer Institute after I finish." I looked at each of them in turn. "If you want to be part of my life going forward, you need to start treating me with the same respect you'd show any other adult. No more errands, no more last-minute demands, no more dismissing my career as a hobby. I'm not asking for special treatment or excessive praise. I'm asking for basic human dignity." Dad tried to assert control one last time. "You can't talk to your family this way. After everything we've done for you, you owe us respect." "Respect is earned," I replied, "and threatening to disown your daughter because she chose her career over cake emergencies isn't exactly respectful behavior." The conversation continued for another hour with various attempts at guilt manipulation and bargaining. But something fundamental had shifted. I was no longer the desperate daughter seeking approval from people who withheld it as a form of control. I was a successful professional with options opportunities and the confidence to enforce my own boundaries. 6 months later, my life looks completely different from that gray wedding morning when I thought I had to choose between family and career. I moved into a beautiful graduate housing complex near the university, where I'm surrounded by other PhD students and researchers who understand the demands of academic life. My research has continued to gain recognition in the scientific community. The pharmaceutical company that expressed interest at the conference has funded a major expansion of my work, and we're moving toward human trials within the next year. The potential impact of this research goes far beyond anything I initially imagined. The job offer from the National Cancer Institute has evolved into something even better. They've created a specialized research position that allows me to split time between their facilities and the university, maintaining my academic connections while having access to resources most researchers only dream of. The salary alone is more than my entire family's contribution to my education over 5 years. But the real transformation has been personal. I've learned to value myself the way my professional colleagues value me. I've built relationships based on mutual respect and shared interests rather than obligation and guilt. My graduate advisor treats me as an equal partner in research. My new colleagues seek my input on projects and value my expertise. The family situation has slowly improved, though it required consistent boundary enforcement on my part. Dad eventually acknowledged that his threats and manipulation were wrong, though it took several months and multiple conversations. He's begun asking about my research with what seems like genuine interest, and he's stopped making dismissive comments about my career. Mom has had the hardest time adjusting to the new dynamic. She still occasionally tries to manipulate me into prioritizing family events over professional obligations, but she's learning that those tactics no longer work. She's also started bragging to her friends about my achievements, which feels both validating and somewhat ironic. Carolyn and I have developed something resembling a normal sister relationship for the first time in our adult lives. It turns out that when she's not being positioned as the golden child in competition with me, she's actually capable of being supportive and interested in my work. She's even started referring patients from her law firm to medical researchers I know, creating professional connections neither of us expected. The biggest lesson I've learned is that seeking approval from people who don't value you is a losing game. For years, I exhausted myself trying to earn love and respect from family members who had already decided I wasn't worth their attention. I measured my worth by their standards instead of developing my own sense of value. Walking away from that wedding was the first time I chose myself over their expectations, and it opened the door to a life I never imagined possible. I learned that respect isn't automatically given in families just because you share blood. Sometimes you have to demand it by showing people who you really are and what you're capable of achieving. The most powerful thing I ever did was stop seeking validation from people who were determined not to give it. When I finally recognized my own worth, everything else fell into place. The career opportunities, the financial independence, the healthy relationships, they all became possible because I stopped accepting treatment that was beneath my value. My message to anyone dealing with similar family dynamics is this: your worth isn't determined by other people's opinions, even if those people are family. If you're constantly trying to prove yourself to people who are committed to underestimating you, you're fighting an unwinnable battle. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away from situations and relationships that diminish your sense of self-worth. Today I'm presenting my research at medical conferences around the world. I'm contributing to scientific knowledge that could save lives. I'm building a career that fulfills me intellectually and financially. None of this would have been possible if I'd stayed trapped in the role my family assigned me. What started as the worst day of my life, missing my sister's wedding and facing my family's anger, turned out to be the beginning of the best chapter of my life. Sometimes you have to be willing to disappoint people in order to become who you're meant to be. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own dreams? How did you handle the pressure to conform to roles that didn't fit who you really are? Share your experiences in the comments below, and let me know if you've ever had to walk away from situations that were holding you back. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more stories about finding your voice and standing up for yourself. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that their dreams and goals are worth fighting for, even when the people closest to them don't understand. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that you have the power to define your own worth. Don't let anyone convince you to settle for less than you deserve, especially when it comes to respect from the people who should love and support you unconditionally. Your future self will thank you for the courage you show today.